Okay, in the last couple of sections, we've looked at setting up a TinkerCAD account. We've logged in, we've given your project a new name, and we've had a play with the work plane, and you've shifted it all about, and you've maybe moved it over there. Now hopefully you remember to press the home button so we can start afresh here, but if you haven't, simply click on the home button and it will bring everything back to the default view, which is where we like to start our lessons. So over here we have a number of objects on the right hand side. We have two objects here, the box and the cylinder, which have got grey stripes through them, and we're not going to use these in this particular section. In the next section we'll explain those in much more detail. They are not solid colours and they're not solid objects. What are solid objects is everything that's underneath it. So if we was to click on the box, for example, by left clicking, we can drag that over to the left hand side where the work plane is, and just like Mary's little lamb, which followed Mary everywhere, Mr. Leader's little box will follow Mr. Leader's pointer everywhere. And when I finish it, I can just left click again and it'll drop it. And it'll drop a red box because it starts off as red. Now we can change its colour. If we come over here now to where it says shape, we can change its colour if we wanted to. So let's say I want that to be yellow. Maybe I want that to be a darker yellow, or an even darker yellow from that. So you can change that to whatever colour you like. I'm going to call it blue, just because I can. And the next thing I want to do is to show you some other things you can do with it. I'm going to press the F key. I've moved the work plane around so it's easier to see what's going on. Now in this lesson I want you to, when you have a play, don't bother unless you really want to with the hole, which is you got here, you've got solid and you've got a hole. I want you to ignore that unless you're really curious. I will be covering it in much more detail in the next lesson. So we have a number of parameters here. We have radius, so let's look at radius first of all. Now radius will round off the corners. So if I go too far, the square, the box is actually turned into a sphere. But we can just move the angle slightly. But as you can see now, we can have rounded corners on our box if we want. So I'll leave it like that for the time being. Now steps is, this is a round curve. This is made up of lots of little steps to actually make it look round. The fewer the steps we have, you'll see now, literally the more facets it has. Facets is just another way for a face. Word for a face. So if I look at it, you can see there are other faces. Let's see if changing the colour helps. A little bit. You can see now there's 1, 2, 3, 4 faces. And you can see there are 4 steps. So the more steps we have, the rounder it gets. Now this is very important when we look at the cylinder and the sphere. That does tend to, you will see steps being very useful there. So what I've got now is a radius with lots of steps in on a box. The box is being had round the corners. If I was to make the radius a little bit bigger and bring the steps right down, you can see that it gets some really funky shapes. Look at that. Now, if you was a fan of NASA and you wanted to reproduce one of these spacecraft that went to the moon, this is one of the basic shapes of the lunar lander. So automatically you're given a huge head start if you wanted to design one in TinkerCAD. And that's as low as it goes, 1. So it's 1 step between there and the edge of the radius. And as you can see now, by changing the radius, we'll change how far down it will go. And here you are. You've got a diamond. Okay, let's turn it off. You have length, width and height, which of course change the length, the width and the height of the object. Now I've taken that right off screen, but that doesn't matter. By pressing the F key, everything is brought back. So another way of changing the physical size of an object is by using something called the drag bars, and here in each corner you will see white boxes, and there's a box on the top surface too, and I'll explain that shortly. So when we put a pointer over one of those little white boxes, it changes to red, and that then allows us, while I'm clicking with my left mouse, that allows me to move 3 of the corners of the box. The opposite corner, no matter which corner you grab, stays still. It's static. So I've moved all 4 now, and as you can see, one corner stays still. Now if we was to look at the little black blocks in the middle instead, we can move that, you'll see that only 2 sides move, or 2 sides gets resized. If I do that here, I'm just going to zoom out a tad. I click here because it allows us to do something else. If you had a precise measurement and you wanted to enter the actual measurements in as numbers rather than dragging them, and you'll see the physical size changes with these numbers here and here. As I move it in, the numbers get smaller. If you and you could actually try and tweak it like this, but it's not always easy. So what you could do is actually type the numbers in instead. So you're going to grab the corner, I'm going to click over here. Let's say I wanted 50 by 45. So I'll click and type in 50 here, hit the return key, and that makes it 50 millimeters. All the work I do in TinkerCAD is going to be in millimeters unless I say otherwise. So in case I forget to mention it in the future, so it's 50 down there, I mean 50 millimeters. And the other size we wanted was 45. So 45. And there we have it. We've resized the object to precise measurements. Now the next size that we need to look at is the height. How high is the box? Now we could change it here, and we can type a number in there. Let's say 70, and that'll change the box to 70 millimeters high, and that looks roughly right. But of course you can actually change the sides here by making sure you click on the top one, the one that's on the top surface. By clicking on that, you can change the number here too. Let's call that 50, and that then resizes itself down to 50. So the last thing we need to do with these blocks, and I want you to experiment with all of these shapes, or as many shapes as you want until you're comfortable with how they can be manipulated, is I want to be able to lift it off the work plane. You can do this by pushing your pointer over that little arrow above all your objects. They all have this, and it will turn red. I'll just focus in, see if I can make that easier to see. It will go red if you can see that. By left clicking on that and lifting that upwards, you'll see now, let's do it from this side, you see now it's been lifted off the work plane. So let's see if we're going to zoom out. So I can lift that as high as I want, and down here of course you've got the numbers. So if you want to do a specific number, let's say 47.78, that's very, very specific, isn't it? It will move it 47.78 from the bottom edge, this is important bit, from the bottom edge to the top of the work plane. So you can see there, that is now in mid-air, which you might find very useful. And to lower it, we can of course lower it, we can use the arrow, or we can use that number. If you want to put it down to ground, it's 0. Another way of dropping it to the ground, let me just lift it off to doesn't really matter how high, is if you want to drop it to the ground quickly, just press the D key, and the D key will drop. It's a D for drop. So that's this lesson. What I'd like you to do before you go to the next part of the lesson is click on all the other shapes. I want you to press the F key to zoom in. I want you to change its colour from its default colour to another colour. Well, that's the same as the let's just choose a darker colour to a darker colour, and then whatever parameters it has, I want you to change. I want you to get to understand all these objects. Okay, with the bevel, for example, it'll give a shoulder to the top and the bottom, looking a bit like a drinks can there. There's a bit clear if you wanted to draw design a drinks can, and it has segments. So I want you to play with several objects until you're familiar with them. The common ones, the box, the cylinder, the sphere. And I'll give you one more. I want you to play with the pentagon. If you want to do any of, no, actually let's do the pyramid. So forget pentagon, do the pyramid. If you want to do others as well, please do. Okay, I want you to be very familiar with how all these work, and then go on to the next lesson, which we talk about grouping objects and where we use the hole and where we discuss the box and the cylinder. So I'll see you then.